Private Emily Carter's boots crunched against the gravel of Camp Lejeune, the sound sharp in the morning air. She kept her eyes forward, hands clasped lightly behind her back, and shoulders squared as if she had walked these grounds 100 times before. The camp was alive with chaos. New recruits shouted, laughed, and flexed, proving their strength before even stepping into the drill instructor's line of sight. Emily said nothing. Her silence set her apart immediately. Where others sought attention, she exuded calm. Where others boasted, she observed. The barracks loomed behind her, long rows of uniform bunks and metal lockers, a steel-scented sanctuary that would become home for the next 12 weeks of her life. Around her, the new recruits unloaded duffel bags, boots clanging against the concrete, voices rising in bravado. One boy tripped over a strap, spilling his gear across the floor, prompting laughter. Emily did not smile. She simply bent down, picked up the fallen items, and stacked them neatly on the bunk. It was a small act, but her movements carried an uncanny precision. Some of the recruits noticed and whispered among themselves. "That's the Barbie in boots," one muttered, pointing at Emily as she adjusted her uniform. She heard it, but ignored the remark. She didn't need to answer. A group of male recruits, already sizing up potential rivals, gravitated toward her. Leading them was Corporal Dan Mercer, broad-shouldered and loud, the kind of man whose presence demanded attention before words did. He smirked at Emily. "Hey, Cupcake," he said, loud enough for several others to hear. "You sure you're in the right place? This isn't a tea party." Emily's blue-gray eyes met his for a brief second. They were calm, unreadable, like water reflecting the sky. She didn't flinch. She didn't nod. She didn't even raise an eyebrow. She simply picked up her duffel bag and walked past him. Mercer's smirk faltered slightly, replaced by a flicker of irritation. No one had ever ignored him like that. Drill Instructor Harris appeared at the edge of the barracks, his boots hitting the concrete in sharp, precise stomps. The entire group snapped to attention, and the noise of the recruits' chatter ceased instantly. Harris was a man with an imposing presence, tall, muscular, with eyes that seemed to drill straight through pretense. He surveyed the new recruits with a practiced gaze, stopping briefly on Emily. "You there," he barked, pointing. "Private Carter?" Emily stepped forward, heels together, hands at her sides. "Yes, sir," she said, her voice quiet but firm. Not timid. Not hesitant, firm. Harris nodded once, almost imperceptibly, before moving on. Emily felt a flicker of acknowledgement pass between them. He didn't smile, but he didn't scold either. In his world, that was praise. The first morning at Camp Lejeune was brutal. Recruits were hustled from one drill to another, learning the unrelenting rhythm of military life. Formations, push-ups, timed runs, and endless inspections. Emily adapted quickly. Her small stature, lean but muscular, allowed her to navigate the physical challenges with an effortless precision that drew quiet glances from others. Where her peers struggled and complained, she moved like a well-oiled machine. Every step, every motion, seemed deliberate. During the first physical training session, the recruits were ordered to sprint across the base with full packs. Mercer shot her a skeptical look. "Bet she won't last 2 minutes," he whispered to his friend behind him. Others laughed, echoing the sentiment. Emily didn't react. She fell into rhythm, long, steady strides, breathing measured and controlled. By the halfway mark, the mocking had faded. When the whistle blew to signal the end, she had crossed the line first, barely winded. The silence from her fellow recruits was deafening. Some stared, trying to figure out if luck had played a role. Mercer's jaw tightened. He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came. Later that morning, during the first drill, Emily encountered another test of endurance. Push-ups. One by one, the recruits collapsed, exhausted. Emily's arms pumped rhythmically, every push precise. She finished, then lowered herself into a perfect plank, holding position while others gasped for air. Mercer's friends muttered under their breaths. "How's she doing that?" Emily didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her silence was a presence, a statement louder than any words could be. It was becoming clear to everyone around her. This was not a girl who could be dismissed. Even the drill instructor seemed intrigued. Harris watched as Emily followed orders without complaint, her movements fluid, her focus unwavering. In a room full of shouting, struggling, and chaos, she moved like a shadow, unnoticed by some, unnerving to others. The first evening in the barracks offered no respite. Recruits attempted to bond over shared hardships, but Emily kept to herself, quietly organizing her gear, inspecting her uniform, and reading the manual handed out during orientation. Some whispered behind her back, speculating about her background. One even suggested she had a hidden advantage, a family with military connections. Emily didn't hear them. She didn't need to. That night, as the lights dimmed and the base fell into a restless quiet, Emily lay on her bunk, staring at the ceiling. Memories of her childhood in Kansas drifted into her mind. Her father, a retired Marine instructor, teaching her discipline, strength, and patience from a young age. She remembered his words. "Strength isn't loud, Emily. It's quiet. It's unseen. But it is always there." She clenched her hands lightly, feeling the echoes of his training flow through her. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, more scrutiny, more mockery. But Emily was ready. She had never been afraid of judgment. She had never needed to prove herself to anyone but her own sense of honor. The quiet girl from Kansas had arrived at Camp Lejeune, unnoticed yet unforgettable. And though the others laughed, mocked, and underestimated her, Emily Carter carried something far stronger than noise or bluster. Focus, discipline, and the calm storm of someone who had been trained to endure and to conquer. The morning sun cast long shadows across the base, illuminating the chaos of new recruits hustling through the day's drills. Private Emily Carter moved through it all like a shadow herself, silent, precise, and focused. Every step she took was measured, every action deliberate. She didn't seek attention, but it came to her anyway. In the world of Marines, silence often draws curiosity, and sometimes mockery. By the second week, the teasing had grown louder. Emily's quiet demeanor became a target for the more vocal recruits. They joked about her small frame, the faint smile she never wore, and the way she carried herself with calm confidence. Mercer, now thoroughly irritated by her presence, led the charge. "Hey, little Barbie in boots. Careful, don't break a nail on those push-ups." He sneered during morning PT. His cronies laughed, pounding their fists on their knees as Emily simply ignored them. She didn't respond. She didn't flinch. She continued her push-ups, each one perfect, arms trembling slightly only from effort, not fear. Her quiet defiance, the way she didn't beg for attention, didn't retaliate, unsettled them more than words ever could. During the timed runs across the base, Mercer tried to leave her behind, speeding up to assert dominance. "Come on, Cupcake, keep up," he shouted, expecting her to falter. Emily fell into rhythm effortlessly, her long strides eating the distance between them. By the time they reached the finish line, she had crossed first, unbroken, almost graceful in her efficiency. Some recruits whispered in disbelief. How could she, so small, so quiet, outpace all of them? Her victory only fueled Mercer's irritation. He approached her after the run, chest heaving, sweat streaking his forehead. "Lucky," he spat, trying to hide his embarrassment behind bravado. Emily tilted her head slightly and replied softly, "Maybe." That single word cut through the bravado like a blade, simple, calm, and firm. Mercer didn't know how to respond, and the moment passed into awkward silence. Even during drill exercises, Emily's focus never wavered. When the platoon was ordered to assemble for hand-to-hand combat practice, she followed every instruction meticulously, her movements smooth, fluid, and precise. The instructor demonstrated a series of defensive maneuvers, expecting the recruits to struggle. Most did, fumbling arms, uneven stances, or missing steps entirely. Emily mirrored every move perfectly, absorbing each instruction like a sponge. By the end of the session, Mercer's mocking had reached a crescendo. "Bet she can't even handle a real fight," he muttered under his breath, loud enough for several others to hear. His friends chuckled, nodding. They were certain the quiet girl had a weakness they could exploit. Later, in the barracks, the whispers grew louder. Recruits speculated about her background, some assuming she was the daughter of a high-ranking officer or a legacy admission. None dared confront her directly. She remained distant, almost ethereal in her calmness, moving with precision as she folded her uniform and organized her gear. The way she conducted herself, even in mundane tasks, was unnerving to many. It was almost as if she had been trained for this, though no one knew exactly how. Mercer, however, was determined to break her. During downtime, he cornered her near the lockers. "You think you're better than us?" he demanded, jabbing a finger toward her chest. "You think you can just waltz in here, act all calm, and make everyone else look stupid?" Emily's expression remained unreadable. Her voice was quiet but steady. "I'm not trying to be better than anyone," she said. "I'm just doing my job." The reply only fueled his frustration. Mercer stomped away, muttering threats under his breath. The other recruits, sensing the tension, either laughed nervously or kept their distance. Emily didn't seek confrontation, but it followed her, drawn by her quiet confidence. Even the instructors began to notice. Drill instructor Harris observed her during one of the obstacle courses. She moved with a strange combination of agility and patience, never rushing, never panicking, despite the challenges designed to break recruits physically and mentally. Harris had seen countless new Marines, loud and eager, yet Emily's composure was rare. He didn't interfere, but he watched carefully. The tension reached a breaking point during lunch in the mess hall. Mercer, clearly irritated by her growing reputation, decided to embarrass her publicly. "Hey, quiet girl," he shouted across the table. "You think you belong here? Maybe they let you in because no one else could survive." Laughter erupted around the hall. Recruits snickered, and some shook their heads in disbelief at his audacity. Emily remained seated, calmly picking at her tray. She looked up briefly, meeting Mercer's gaze. Her eyes were steady, almost piercing. "I'll let my actions speak," she said softly. Not loud enough for everyone to hear, but clear enough for him to understand. The words lingered in the air. They weren't a threat, but a promise. The room grew quieter. Mercer's smirk faltered slightly. He wasn't used to silence being so intimidating. That evening, as the recruits settled into the barracks, Emily took a moment to reflect. The mockery, the laughter, the constant scrutiny, she expected it. She had grown up under her father's training, a former Marine instructor who had taught her discipline, resilience, and the quiet strength that came from mastery of body and mind. She thought of his words, "Never let the noise distract you. Let your skills speak when the time is right." Emily knew that time was approaching. Every glance, every taunt, every mocking word would become fuel. She didn't hate Mercer or the others. She merely accepted that they didn't understand yet. One day, they would. Night fell, and the camp grew quiet, except for the soft hum of distant generators and the occasional bark of an instructor in the distance. Emily lay on her bunk, staring at the ceiling. She flexed her hands, feeling the tension in her muscles and the readiness in her mind. She was small, yes, and quiet, yes, but that quiet held power. The kind of power that didn't need to shout, didn't need approval, and could not be underestimated. As she drifted to sleep, she imagined tomorrow's challenges. The first sparring matches were approaching, and she could feel the curiosity and skepticism of her peers intensifying. They still saw a quiet girl, easy to mock, easy to ignore. They hadn't yet realized that Emily Carter was not just another recruit. She was a storm waiting to strike, calm but unstoppable. And for the first time since arriving at Camp Lejeune, Emily smiled faintly, not with arrogance, but with certainty. Tomorrow she would prove it. The morning fog clung to the training field like a blanket, dampening the clamor of early drills, but not the energy that crackled between the recruits. Private Emily Carter tightened the straps on her gloves, feeling the cool bite of the leather against her knuckles. Today was different. Today, the platoon would begin hand-to-hand combat training, a crucial step in separating the strong from the weak, the prepared from the unprepared. Mercer's eyes flicked toward her as they lined up for the instructor's briefing. He had been nursing his bruised ego since her silent victories in runs and push-ups. The quiet girl who never spoke, never boasted, had outpaced everyone and done it with a poise none of them could understand. He had tolerated it, mocked it, but now he had decided to confront it head-on. "All right, maggots." Drill instructor Harris barked, his voice cutting through the crisp air. "Today, you'll learn the fundamentals of marine combat. Stay alert. Respect your opponent. Fail, and you'll find yourself on the ground faster than you ever imagined." The recruits shuffled into a circle on the field, boots sinking slightly into the soft, damp grass. Harris scanned the group with a piercing gaze, pausing on Emily. She stood perfectly still, gloves snug, hands relaxed at her sides, watching everything like a predator studying prey. The other recruits shifted uneasily. "Volunteers for the first demonstration?" Harris barked. A few eager hands shot up, Mercer's among them. The instructor's eyes landed on Emily. "Private Carter?" A ripple of laughter swept through the group. Mercer grinned, smug and certain. "This is going to be easy," he muttered to his friends. "Watch her crumble." Emily stepped forward without hesitation. Her posture was calm, almost detached, yet there was an undercurrent of confidence that made the mocking pause. She didn't glance around the circle or respond to the snickers. She simply moved to the center and assumed a ready stance, gloves up, eyes forward. The instructor clapped his hands sharply. "Begin!" Mercer lunged first, fists swinging with force and arrogance. Emily's reaction was precise, almost preternatural. She sidestepped smoothly, her body shifting like water around his strike. Mercer's momentum carried him slightly past her, and with a controlled motion, she grabbed his wrist, twisted, and flipped him onto the ground with a practiced throw. Gasps rippled through the recruits. Mercer hit the mud with a thud, face pressed against the wet grass, staring up at her in stunned disbelief. For a brief moment, even the instructor's usual stoicism faltered. Emily stood over him, breathing evenly, not a drop of sweat marring her composed expression. "Permission to continue, sir?" she asked quietly. The circle was silent, the only sound the distant wind rustling the trees. Harris blinked, then gave a sharp nod. "Continue, Private Carter," he said, voice steady but tinged with curiosity. Mercer scrambled to his feet, red-faced and furious, ignoring the protests of his friends. He lunged again, more cautiously this time, but Emily's movements were fluid and precise. Every punch he threw was met with deflection, every grab countered with skill. Within moments, he was once again on the ground, this time with more force, unable to find leverage against her technique. The recruits were staring now, a mixture of awe and fear in their eyes. Emily's quiet demeanor had not changed. She didn't celebrate or gloat. She simply moved with the efficiency of someone who had been trained beyond what anyone in the circle had anticipated. "Who is she?" whispered one recruit to another. She's not human," said another, voice trembling slightly. Harris' gaze sharpened. He had seen countless recruits over the years, some arrogant, some skilled, most overconfident. Yet there was something about Emily that was different: controlled strength, calm intelligence, and a presence that demanded respect without demanding attention. Mercer's friends stepped forward, emboldened by the idea that Emily's victory over Mercer was a fluke. They formed a semicircle around her, smirking, confident that she could not withstand 6 opponents at once. "Time to even the score," one muttered. Emily didn't react immediately. Her blue-gray eyes swept over them, calm, unreadable. She didn't flinch, didn't tighten her stance. She simply waited. The first recruit lunged, wild and desperate. Emily sidestepped, twisted, and executed a controlled takedown, sending him sprawling. The next tried a high strike. She caught his wrist, redirected his force, and brought him to the ground. One by one, she disarmed, blocked, and threw the others, all in a smooth, continuous sequence. Her movements were precise and efficient, each one a testament to years of disciplined training. By the time the 6th recruit hit the ground, the circle was deathly silent. Sweat dripped from the stunned young men, their mouths open in disbelief. Mercer, who had been recovering, looked on, jaw slack. This was no fluke, no luck. Emily Carter, the quiet girl, had single-handedly bested 6 trained male recruits without breaking a sweat. Harris finally barked, "Enough!" His voice cut through the stunned silence, but it was more than an order. It was acknowledgement. Emily stood, unshaken, gloves at her sides, breathing evenly. Not a muscle out of place. Not a drop of fear. She had turned mockery into silence, skepticism into awe. As the recruits scrambled to their feet, whispering among themselves, Mercer approached her, chest heaving, mud streaked across his face. His usual bravado was gone, replaced with grudging respect and a flicker of fear. Where did you learn that?" he stammered. Emily's voice was quiet, calm, but carried weight. "My father trained me," she said. "Before he died, he taught me discipline, focus, and how to control my strength. That's all you need to know." The revelation rippled through the group. For the first time, the recruits didn't mock her. They watched her with new eyes, unsure how to reconcile the quiet demeanor with the undeniable skill she had displayed. Even Harris, who rarely showed emotion, allowed a small nod of approval. "Impressive," he said, almost under his breath. "Very impressive." Emily didn't respond. She simply returned to her stance, ready for the next command. The others knew then that she was not a recruit to be underestimated. She was a force, quiet, controlled, and lethal when necessary. As the training session ended, the platoon gathered for debriefing. Mercer avoided her gaze, muttering under his breath about lucky strikes and flukes. But the other recruits weren't so sure. The whispers continued, filled with speculation about her background, her training, and the quiet intensity that radiated from her every move. That evening, as Emily lay on her bunk, reflecting on the day, she allowed herself a small smile. The first challenge had been met, and she had proven more than her skill. She had proven that quiet strength carried weight in ways that noise never could. Tomorrow would bring new tests, new skeptics, and perhaps new confrontations. But Emily Carter was ready. She had arrived at Camp Lejeune not to impress or intimidate, but to honor her father's legacy, to push herself beyond limits, and to earn respect the only way that mattered, through action. And deep down, she knew that the true challenge was just beginning. The sun hung low over Camp Lejeune, casting long shadows across the training field as the platoon gathered for the afternoon sparring session. The air was thick with tension, a mixture of anticipation, sweat, and the faint smell of mud. Private Emily Carter stood quietly at the edge of the circle, her gloves snug, posture relaxed, yet every fiber of her being poised for action. Today would be different. Today she would face the ultimate test of skill, strength, and control. Mercer and his cronies had been plotting this for days. 6 of them, the biggest, the strongest, and most confident recruits in the platoon, surrounded her, smirking. "Time to show everyone who's really in charge," Mercer said, cracking his knuckles. His confidence was loud, almost audacious, and he expected her to fold under the pressure. The drill instructor barked a sharp order. "Go!" Emily didn't flinch. She didn't retreat. She simply shifted her weight lightly, allowing the first recruit to approach. His attack was fast, aggressive, a wild swing aimed at her torso. Emily sidestepped with a fluid motion, catching his wrist in a firm grip. A quick twist, and the recruit stumbled to the ground, face flushed with disbelief. The second lunged, thinking she was distracted. Emily anticipated his movement, stepping inside his guard, using his own momentum to flip him onto the grass. Her movements were precise, controlled, and perfectly timed, a sequence honed over years of disciplined training that no amount of raw strength could counter. The remaining 4 hesitated for a moment, watching the first 2 fall. Their smirks faltered. This was no ordinary recruit. This was something else entirely. Emily's expression remained calm, almost serene, as she adjusted her stance, ready for the next challenge. The third man attacked with a high kick, aiming for her head. Emily caught his ankle mid-air, pivoted, and guided him into a controlled throw, sending him sprawling onto his back. The fourth charged, reckless and loud. She sidestepped, shifted her weight, and executed a perfect judo-style flip, landing him neatly on the mud with a grunt. By now, the platoon had gone silent. Even Mercer's friends, who had been jeering moments before, were frozen in disbelief. Whispers circulated like wildfire. How is she doing this? Who is she really? Mercer's turn came last. His pride bruised, his ego wounded, he lunged with every ounce of force he had. Emily didn't panic. She observed, measured, and waited for his momentum to carry him forward. With a swift sidestep and a perfectly timed grip on his arm, she redirected his force and executed a seamless takedown, sending him to the ground in a thud that echoed across the field. 6 men lay before her, some winded, others in disbelief, all staring at the quiet girl who had dismantled them one by one without breaking a sweat. Emily stood, gloves at her sides, posture calm and composed. She had not shouted, not cursed, not celebrated. She simply waited for the instructor's command. The silence was deafening. Then drill instructor Harris stepped forward, his face a mixture of astonishment and respect. "Enough!" He barked, breaking the tension, though his eyes never left Emily. The lesson had been made. Skill, precision, and calm decisiveness mattered more than brute strength or loud arrogance. The recruits struggled to their feet, wiping mud from their faces, whispering to each other. Mercer, still on his knees, stared at her with a mix of rage and grudging admiration. How did you?" he muttered, shaking his head. His friends avoided her gaze, now unsure how to process what they had witnessed. Emily's voice broke the silence, calm and firm. "Permission to reset, sir?" she asked, addressing the instructor, who nodded sharply. Her tone carried no arrogance, only readiness, control, and respect for the rules. She hadn't needed to boast. The demonstration spoke for itself. As the recruits regrouped, whispers of her past began circulating. One of the more observant recruits, Private Daniels, leaned over to another. She must have trained some serious stuff before coming here. No normal recruit moves like that. Emily didn't respond. She continued to adjust her gloves, tighten her stance, and prepare for the next drill. Her focus was unwavering. She knew that today was more than a sparring session. It was the first step in earning the respect of a platoon that had doubted her from day one. Mercer, bruised in ego and body, approached her after the drill. "Where did you learn that?" he asked, voice low, almost cautious. Emily met his gaze calmly. "My father trained me," she replied simply. "Before he passed, he taught me discipline, patience, and control. Strength isn't about shouting or brute force. It's about knowing what to do and when." Her words, quiet but resolute, silenced him. Mercer had always relied on aggression, loudness, and intimidation. Emily's mastery was different, quiet, precise, and utterly effective. For the first time, he saw her not as a target for mockery, but as something far more formidable. Even the instructors were impressed. Harris approached her privately, his usually stern expression softened. "You've got talent, Carter," he said. "I've seen hundreds of recruits, and very few have that level of control under pressure. Keep it up, and you'll be leading others sooner than you think." Emily nodded respectfully. She didn't need praise. She didn't need recognition. Her goal had never been to impress. It had been to honor her father's legacy and prove to herself that she could meet any challenge. That evening, as the platoon settled into the barracks, Emily took a moment to reflect. The 6-on-1 drill had been more than a physical test. It had been a mental one. Every movement, every throw, every deflection required her to remain calm under pressure, to anticipate multiple opponents at once, and to act decisively. It had tested not just her body, but her mind, her patience, and her resolve. The other recruits avoided her gaze that night. Some whispered stories about her skill, speculated about her past, and even questioned whether she was human. Mercer, meanwhile, sat alone, nursing his bruised pride and silently acknowledging that the quiet girl from Kansas had changed the dynamic of the platoon forever. Emily lay on her bunk, staring at the ceiling. She flexed her fingers, feeling the muscles in her arms and shoulders. Each movement was precise, each motion deliberate, a reflection of years of training, discipline, and dedication. She knew the challenges would only grow harder from this point on, but she was ready. The quiet girl had made her statement. She had turned ridicule into respect, mockery into silence, and doubt into awe. And deep down, she knew the real challenges had only just begun. Tomorrow, she would face new opponents, more rigorous tests, and the judgment of the platoon. But she wasn't afraid. She had learned to move through the noise, to act with purpose, and to let her actions speak louder than words. And as the lights dimmed and the barracks grew quiet, Emily Carter, the quiet girl who had dropped 6 Marines without breaking a sweat, closed her eyes, already anticipating the trials that awaited her. She was ready for anything. The barracks was unusually quiet that night, a rare pause in the constant hum of a military base. Recruits who had once jeered at Emily Carter were now whispering in disbelief, replaying in their minds the events of the afternoon. 6 men, all trained and strong, had fallen to a single, quiet Marine without a single wasted movement. No one had ever seen anything like it. Even Mercer, who had been at the center of the earlier humiliation, sat silently in his bunk, his pride bruised, his anger simmering, and his curiosity growing. He couldn't stop thinking about her, the girl he had mocked, underestimated, and laughed at, who had dismantled him and his friends with such calm precision. There was fear in his respect now, a mixture of awe and disbelief that he didn't know how to process. After lights out, when most of the barracks had succumbed to exhaustion, Mercer quietly approached Emily's bunk. He hesitated, unsure of what to say. His ego, bruised but alive, wrestled with the instinct to assert dominance, but curiosity overpowered it. Where did you learn that?" he asked, voice low. Emily didn't startle or flinch. She remained calm, sitting cross-legged on her bunk, gloves off but still neatly tied together beside her. "I've trained my whole life," she said softly, her voice carrying neither arrogance nor defensiveness. "My father was a Marine instructor. He taught me everything he knew before he passed away." Mercer stared at her, trying to reconcile this revelation with the quiet, composed girl before him. "Your dad. He trained you like that?" Emily nodded. "Yes. From the moment I could walk, he taught me discipline, focus, and patience. He believed that strength isn't loud. It's quiet, controlled, and precise. He used to say that a true warrior doesn't need to prove anything. Their skill speaks for itself when the time is right." Mercer sank onto the edge of his bunk, running a hand through his hair. I didn't realize. I thought?" His voice trailed off. He had assumed she was a weak, quiet girl, someone easy to mock. But now he understood that she was nothing like the image he had created in his mind. Emily looked at him calmly. "I didn't join to prove anything to anyone but myself. I joined to honor him, to carry forward what he taught me, and to see if I could meet the challenges that the Marines demand." Mercer didn't respond immediately. He sat in silence, the weight of understanding settling in. The bravado he had relied upon seemed trivial compared to the quiet strength Emily exuded. He realized that her victories earlier in the day had not been flukes. They had been deliberate, honed, and executed with control beyond anyone's comprehension. Word of Emily's skill spread quickly through the barracks by morning. Recruits who had once mocked her now whispered with awe, speculating about her background and training. "She's not just a recruit," one said. "She's something else." During the next training session, the mood of the platoon had shifted dramatically. The laughter and mockery that had once filled the morning air were replaced with cautious observation. Every time Emily moved, eyes followed her, some filled with admiration, others with a mixture of fear and respect. Even the drill instructor, Harris, acknowledged her in ways he had rarely done for new recruits. He would call her forward to demonstrate techniques, observing her execution with a rare gleam of approval in his eyes. Emily didn't boast or seek attention. She simply moved with precision, demonstrating each maneuver with the same quiet focus that had earned her the respect of the platoon. Mercer, meanwhile, struggled to adjust. The same recruit who had mocked her, laughed at her, and attempted to dominate her, now found himself in the unfamiliar position of respect and curiosity. He sought her guidance in training drills, asking questions in a tone far humbler than the arrogance of previous days. Emily answered him patiently, showing no condescension, just instruction and encouragement. Later that week, during a group exercise, one of the recruits struggled with a combat technique, falling repeatedly. The others snickered quietly, but Emily stepped forward without hesitation. She adjusted the recruit's stance, guided his movements, and demonstrated the technique step by step. Within moments, the recruit executed the move correctly. The platoon watched, stunned, as the quiet girl who had been mocked became a teacher, a leader in skill and composure. The transformation within the platoon was subtle but undeniable. Where there had been ridicule, there was now curiosity and respect. Where there had been arrogance, there was now humility. Emily's presence had shifted the dynamic, not through loud words or aggressive displays, but through action, skill, and quiet confidence. That evening, as the recruits gathered for evening drills, Mercer approached Emily again. His voice was steadier, calmer than before. I get it now," he admitted. "You're not just strong. You're something else." And I think the others are finally realizing it too. Emily nodded slightly, a faint smile brushing her lips. Strength isn't about proving yourself to others. It's about control, patience, and focus. The rest will follow when the time is right. Mercer nodded, a newfound respect evident in his eyes. For the first time, he saw her not as a rival to be defeated, but as an example of what could be achieved through discipline and quiet determination. The days that followed were a turning point. Emily began to integrate into the platoon in a new way. She trained alongside her peers, offering guidance and instruction when needed, always with the same calm authority. The recruits who had once mocked her began to approach her for advice, strategy, and insight. Even Mercer, who had been the loudest critic, now sought her opinion during drills and sparring exercises. Drill instructor Harris observed the change with quiet satisfaction. Emily Carter, the quiet girl from Kansas, had not only proven her skill, but had also reshaped the social dynamic of the platoon. Where once there had been division and mockery, there was now unity, guided by respect earned through action rather than words. By the end of the week, Emily's story had become legend within the platoon. The whispered tales of her 6-on-1 victory, her disciplined movements, and her calm, unshakable demeanor spread beyond the barracks. Recruits from other units heard of the quiet girl who could take on 6 Marines at once, and spoke of her with a mixture of awe and disbelief. That night, Emily lay on her bunk, reflecting on the transformation. The platoon had begun to see her not as a target for ridicule, but as a symbol of focus, skill, and quiet strength. She had honored her father's lessons, not through boasting, but through action. And in doing so, she had earned something far more valuable than victory in a drill. She had earned the respect of her peers and the recognition of those who mattered most. As she closed her eyes, the hum of the barracks fading into silence, Emily felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. The path ahead would be challenging. There would be more tests, more skeptics, and more obstacles. But she was ready. She had proven, to herself and to everyone else, that true strength is not measured by noise or size, but by focus, skill, and unwavering determination. And as the lights dimmed and the bass fell into silence, the quiet girl from Kansas rested, knowing that the real challenges were only just beginning and that she was more than prepared to face them. The sun rose slowly over Camp Lejeune, casting long golden streaks across the training field. The platoon gathered for another day of grueling exercises, but there was a subtle shift in the air. Where once there had been tension and mockery, there was now a quiet curiosity and even admiration directed toward Private Emily Carter. Her skill had become undeniable, her discipline unquestionable, and her calm, measured presence was reshaping the dynamics of the entire platoon. Emily moved through the morning warm-ups like a shadow among her peers, focused, steady, and composed. Her eyes flicked from one recruit to another, noticing their stances, their mistakes, their hesitations. She didn't speak, but her aura demanded attention. The recruits, once loud and confident, now adjusted instinctively, mimicking her movements and following her example without realizing it. Mercer, who had spent the past week nursing his bruised ego and attempting to understand her, followed her quietly. He had tried to dominate her before, but the events of the previous days had shifted something in him. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a cautious respect. He wasn't the only one. Slowly, the rest of the platoon began to observe her, learning from her without her ever explicitly instructing them. The first drill of the day was a simulated tactical maneuver, navigating the terrain, avoiding enemy fire, and coordinating as a unit. Emily's strategic instincts emerged almost immediately. While most recruits rushed forward recklessly, she analyzed the terrain, noted the positions of her teammates, and chose a path that minimized exposure while maximizing efficiency. Stay low, move fast, cover each other, she muttered softly to herself, though she didn't raise her voice. Her teammates, noticing her movements, began following her lead. For the first time, the platoon wasn't just moving as a group of individuals. They were beginning to operate as a cohesive unit. The exercise intensified. Simulated explosions echoed across the field, and smoke obscured vision. Some recruits panicked, stumbling or taking unnecessary risks. Emily remained calm, directing small adjustments through subtle gestures and concise commands. She guided a recruit through a low crawl under barbed wire and intercepted another about to make a reckless dash into an exposed position. By the end of the drill, the platoon had completed the course faster and more efficiently than any group in recent memory. Drill instructor Harris observed from the sidelines, brow furrowed in concentration, yet unable to hide the flicker of approval in his eyes. He rarely saw new recruits inspire this level of coordination, yet Emily had done so without fanfare or force. During the debrief, Harris addressed the platoon. That was impressive. Some of you followed instincts, some of you panicked, but one Marine, Carter, displayed exceptional tactical awareness. Take note. The platoon turned toward Emily, their expressions mixed, awe, respect, and lingering disbelief. Mercer, for the first time, spoke without hesitation. She led us without even trying. She knows what she's doing. Emily's response was quiet but firm. We succeed together when we think, act, and cover each other. That's all. Her words carried no ego, no pride, just clarity and command. The effect was immediate. Recruits began approaching her for advice during drills, listening intently to her observations and corrections. Emily taught through demonstration, showing proper stance, movement, and timing. She corrected errors with precision and patience, never condescending, never raising her voice. By example, she became a leader, quiet, unassuming, yet undeniably authoritative. Even Mercer, once her loudest critic, approached her with a newfound willingness to learn. Show me how to adjust my stance for quicker pivots, he asked, voice subdued but sincere. Emily nodded and demonstrated, moving his shoulders, adjusting his balance, and guiding his footwork until he executed the maneuver correctly. He nodded, impressed. I see what you mean, thanks. The platoon as a whole began to respond to her influence. The recruits started emulating her focus, timing, and patience during exercises. Emily didn't command them in the traditional sense, but her calm competence created a ripple effect, each recruit striving to match her skill and composure. Slowly, respect replaced doubt, admiration replaced mockery. Later that afternoon, the platoon faced a team-based obstacle course, combining physical endurance, tactical decision-making, and teamwork. Emily's strategic thinking shone again. She assessed her teammates' strengths and weaknesses, assigning roles that maximized efficiency. While others might have rushed blindly, she guided the team methodically, choosing routes, distributing tasks, and predicting challenges before they arose. The result was astonishing. The platoon completed the course flawlessly, outperforming expectations and previous records. Drill instructor Harris called the platoon together. Outstanding work today, he said, his gaze lingering on Emily. That's the kind of leadership and tactical thinking we need in the field. Emily didn't boast. She simply acknowledged the praise with a subtle nod and returned to observing her platoon, already thinking about the next drill, the next challenge. Her influence had shifted the platoon from a group of individuals to a functioning unit. They followed her example, learned from her actions, and respected her skill. That evening, in the barracks, the atmosphere had transformed completely. Recruits who had once mocked or doubted her now sought her guidance, eager to learn. Mercer, sitting beside her for the first time in a week, admitted quietly, I underestimated you. You're not just strong. You're smart, too. You actually know how to lead. Emily smiled faintly, a quiet acknowledgement. Leadership isn't about being loud or intimidating, she replied. It's about thinking ahead, acting decisively, and keeping the team together. That's all. Her words left a lasting impression. For the first time, the platoon began to understand the true meaning of strength, not raw power, but skill, focus, and the ability to guide others. Emily's influence extended beyond physical drills. She had begun shaping the mindset of her peers, instilling discipline, awareness, and respect. The transformation was not lost on drill instructor Harris. Observing from a distance, he reflected on her impact. Emily Carter, the quiet girl who had once been mocked, had become an unspoken leader. Her presence inspired others to rise to their potential, to challenge themselves, and to work as a team. Harris knew that recruits like her were rare. Marines who could influence without dominating, lead without shouting, and earn respect without demanding it. By nightfall, the barracks had grown quiet, each recruit reflecting on the day's events. Emily lay on her bunk, her gloves neatly placed beside her, staring at the ceiling. The platoon had begun to see her not just as a skilled Marine, but as a leader, a strategist, and an example of what quiet strength could achieve. She thought of her father's words again. True strength doesn't need to shout. It commands respect quietly, through action and discipline. Every decision, every movement, every lesson she had passed on today was a reflection of that principle. The platoon had begun to understand it, and she knew that with time, their unity and respect would only deepen. As the lights dimmed, Emily closed her eyes, confident in the knowledge that she had not only proven her own capabilities, but had begun shaping the capabilities of those around her. The quiet girl from Kansas had earned more than respect. She had earned influence, trust, and the beginning of leadership that would carry the platoon through even greater challenges ahead. And deep down, she knew that the real tests, those that would challenge body, mind, and heart, were still to come. But Emily Carter was ready. She had proven her skill, earned the respect of her peers, and shown that leadership could be quiet, subtle, and unshakable. The quiet Marine had become a guiding force, and the platoon, once mocking her, now followed willingly, inspired by her calm strength, tactical brilliance, and unwavering resolve. The morning air was heavy with anticipation at Camp Lejeune. Today marked the culmination of weeks of grueling training, the final field exercise. The platoon would face a simulated combat scenario, combining physical endurance, tactical strategy, and teamwork. For most recruits, it was the ultimate test, a trial designed to push even the strongest Marines to their limits. Private Emily Carter stood quietly at the edge of the formation, her uniform immaculate, gloves in place, and posture relaxed yet alert. The sun glinted off her sharp, blue-gray eyes, calm and focused. Around her, the platoon whispered among themselves, still amazed by her previous demonstrations of skill, tactical thinking, and quiet leadership. Today, she would lead them through the most challenging exercise yet. Drill instructor Harris stepped forward, his voice cutting sharply across the field. "Platoon, this is your final field exercise. You will navigate the terrain, overcome obstacles, and complete the mission under simulated enemy fire. Success requires endurance, strategy, and cooperation. Fail, and you fail as a unit, not individually. Move out." The platoon sprang into motion, boots pounding the damp earth. Emily moved with deliberate precision, scanning the field for obstacles, potential hazards, and opportunities. She identified weak points in the platoon's formation, gently adjusting recruits with subtle gestures and whispered corrections. Unlike some of the louder, more reckless recruits, Emily's calm presence guided the group without the need for commands shouted over the chaos. The first obstacle was a river crossing. Most recruits hesitated at the rushing water, wary of losing balance. Emily approached the edge, assessing the current and the safest path. "Step here," she instructed softly, pointing to a narrow, stable stone. One by one, recruits followed her lead, crossing without incident. Mercer, who had once mocked her, now followed her carefully, trusting her judgment completely. The next challenge was a steep, muddy incline. Recruits slipped and struggled, some falling repeatedly. Emily moved to the front, anchoring herself against the incline to guide others. She reached down to steady a struggling recruit, helping him find traction and balance. The act was simple, but it spoke volumes. The quiet girl who had once been mocked was now a steadying presence, a leader through action rather than words. The exercise intensified as simulated gunfire erupted from hidden instructors, forcing the platoon to dive for cover and advance under pressure. Chaos threatened to fragment the group, but Emily remained calm, scanning for threats and plotting the safest route forward. She called out small, precise instructions, guiding recruits to cover points and coordinating movements without panicking. "Left flank, move low. Cover each other," she whispered to a group attempting to advance recklessly. Her tactical intuition, honed through years of disciplined training, ensured the platoon maintained cohesion despite the simulated enemy fire. Recruits who had once doubted her followed her example, trusting her judgment instinctively. Midway through the exercise, Mercer's squad encountered a simulated ambush. Panic flared, and the recruits froze. Emily didn't hesitate. She moved swiftly, assessing the terrain, identifying cover, and calculating angles. With precise direction, she guided Mercer and the others, leading a coordinated countermaneuver that neutralized the threat and allowed the platoon to advance safely. By this point, the platoon's confidence in Emily was unshakable. She didn't demand respect. She earned it through every decision, every calculated move, and every act of guidance under pressure. Her quiet authority created a ripple effect. Where she led, the platoon followed, united in purpose and trust. The final obstacle was the most grueling. A long, uneven stretch of forest filled with hidden traps, obstacles, and the constant threat of simulated gunfire. Recruits were exhausted, their movements slowed by fatigue, mud, and adrenaline. Emily's presence at the forefront steadied the platoon. Her pace was steady, measured, and sustainable, a rhythm that allowed the group to move efficiently without breaking formation. At a particularly treacherous section, Mercer slipped on wet roots, nearly falling into a concealed pit. Emily was immediately there, gripping his arm and pulling him to safety in a smooth, controlled motion. "Keep moving," she said quietly. Her calm voice cut through the adrenaline-fueled panic, instilling focus in those around her. The platoon pushed forward, inspired by her composure. Emily's knowledge of terrain, tactical acumen, and ability to read the situation allowed the unit to avoid hazards and maintain momentum. Even the drill instructors watched from a distance, impressed by her ability to lead without overt commands, blending leadership with action seamlessly. Finally, the platoon reached the end of the course, a high, rocky ridge that required both strength and precision to ascend. Recruits were winded, slipping on the jagged rocks, muscles screaming from exertion. Emily moved first, demonstrating the safest path and helping others navigate difficult sections. One by one, the recruits followed, guided by her steady presence. At the summit, the platoon regrouped, gasping for breath, covered in mud, sweat, and grime. Drill instructor Harris approached, his expression unreadable, though the glint in his eye betrayed admiration. "Platoon, you completed the exercise successfully," he said, voice booming across the ridge. "And one Marine deserves special recognition for leadership, composure, and tactical skill, Private Carter." The platoon erupted in quiet applause, a mixture of relief, admiration, and respect. Even Mercer, usually the loudest, nodded in acknowledgement, his respect now complete. Emily didn't raise her voice or boast. She simply nodded, acknowledging the recognition with quiet grace. Later, in the barracks, the platoon reflected on the day. Recruits who had once mocked Emily now approached her for guidance and advice. Mercer, sitting beside her on the bunk, admitted, "I thought I knew strength. I thought I was ready for anything. But you're on another level. You've earned our respect, and then some." Emily smiled faintly, her calm demeanor unchanged. "Strength isn't about dominating others," she said softly. "It's about discipline, focus, and helping those around you succeed. That's what makes a unit strong, not just one person." The day's events had solidified her place in the platoon. The quiet girl who had once been mocked had become an unspoken hero, a leader whose presence inspired cohesion, trust, and excellence. Her skill, endurance, and composure had earned her the respect of her peers and the instructors alike. As night fell, Emily lay on her bunk, exhausted but satisfied. She reflected on the challenges she had faced, the lessons she had learned, and the respect she had earned through action rather than words. The platoon had evolved alongside her, learning the value of calm strength, discipline, and tactical thinking. Her father's lessons echoed in her mind. True strength doesn't need to shout. It earns respect quietly, through action, discipline, and focus. Every movement today, every decision, every act of guidance had proven those words true. Emily Carter, the quiet girl from Kansas, had become more than a skilled recruit. She had become a leader, a strategist, and a source of inspiration for her platoon. She had faced mockery, doubt, and challenges, and had emerged stronger, wiser, and respected. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new trials, and new opportunities to lead. But tonight, she rested, knowing she had earned her place, not through words, but through action, courage, and unwavering determination. The quiet Marine had become a guiding force, and the platoon, once mocking her, now followed willingly, inspired by her strength, intelligence, and unwavering resolve. The morning dawned with an unusual stillness over Camp Lejeune. Birds chirped softly, and a gentle breeze rustled through the training field. But there was a tension in the air unlike any previous day. Today marked the final review exercise for the recruits, the last chance to prove themselves before moving on to advanced training. The stakes were high, and every Marine felt it. Private Emily Carter stood at the front of the formation, her posture flawless, gloves neatly placed on her belt, eyes scanning her platoon with quiet focus. The sun glinted off her uniform, illuminating the calm determination etched into her expression. Around her, the recruits moved with nervous energy, whispering and exchanging glances. The events of the past weeks had transformed their perception of her, from the quiet, underestimated girl to the unspoken leader of the platoon. Drill Instructor Harris stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. "Platoon, today is your final exercise. You will navigate the terrain, complete objectives under pressure, and demonstrate both individual skill and teamwork. Remember, failure is not just personal. It affects the entire unit. Lead wisely." Emily's gaze swept over the group. She had led them through countless drills, obstacle courses, and simulated ambushes. She had guided them through mistakes and taught them the value of focus and precision. Today, they would demonstrate not just physical skill, but the unity and strength she had inspired. The platoon moved out, boots pounding against the hard-packed earth. Emily led a careful advance, reading the terrain, identifying potential hazards, and guiding the recruits with subtle gestures. Unlike the louder, more reckless Marines, she relied on observation and strategic foresight, a calm presence that allowed the group to maintain cohesion even under simulated enemy fire. The first obstacle was a ravine crossing. Recruits hesitated at the steep drop, but Emily remained composed, identifying secure footholds and instructing the group on how to navigate the treacherous path. One by one, they followed her, inspired by her calm and assured movements. Mercer, now a steadfast follower, moved beside her, adjusting his footing based on her subtle cues. The course intensified as simulated gunfire erupted from hidden instructors. The platoon scattered under pressure, but Emily's training and composure allowed her to guide them through the chaos. "Low, move to cover," she instructed quietly, her voice calm but authoritative. The recruits obeyed instinctively, trusting her judgment completely. Midway through the exercise, a simulated enemy ambush challenged the platoon. Most recruits froze, panicking under the sudden pressure. Emily reacted instantly. She analyzed the terrain, identified cover, and coordinated a countermaneuver. Her instructions were concise, her movements precise. She led the platoon through a flanking maneuver that neutralized the threat and allowed the unit to advance safely. By the time the exercise reached its final challenge, a treacherous ascent up a rocky ridge, the platoon was exhausted, mud-streaked, and winded. Many had expected chaos, perhaps failure, but Emily's influence had maintained order. Her careful guidance allowed recruits to climb safely, navigate unstable footing, and support each other through the grueling climb. At the summit, the platoon regrouped, panting and covered in sweat, mud, and grime. Drill instructor Harris approached, surveying the exhausted Marines. His gaze lingered on Emily, who stood at the forefront, calm, composed, and unflinching despite the exertion. "Platoon, you've completed the exercise," Harris announced, his voice carrying over the ridge. "And one Marine has demonstrated leadership, tactical skill, and composure beyond what is expected of a recruit. Private Carter." The recognition rippled through the group. Recruits who had once mocked her now looked at her with awe, admiration, and respect. Mercer, sitting nearby, nodded solemnly, finally acknowledging the quiet girl who had guided them through every challenge with grace, skill, and authority. Emily didn't raise her voice or boast. She simply nodded, acknowledging the recognition with quiet dignity. The applause of the platoon was subtle but heartfelt, a reflection of the deep respect she had earned. Later, in the barracks, the transformation of the platoon was complete. Recruits approached her not for social approval, but for guidance, advice, and instruction. She patiently demonstrated techniques, corrected errors, and offered subtle insights into strategy and movement. Every action reinforced the lessons she had imparted throughout the training: focus, discipline, and the quiet power of skill over noise. Mercer approached her one final time, his voice steady and sincere. "Emily, I want to apologize. I underestimated you. I mocked you. I thought you were nothing. But you've shown all of us what it means to be strong, disciplined, and a true Marine. You've earned our respect, and I don't take that lightly." Emily smiled faintly, her calm demeanor unchanged. "Respect isn't given, Mercer. It's earned. And it's not just about me. It's about the entire platoon working together. That's how we succeed." The platoon's cohesion was now undeniable. What had once been division, mockery, and skepticism was replaced with unity, trust, and admiration. Emily's influence had reshaped the group, not through forceful dominance, but through quiet guidance, strategic thinking, and unwavering composure. That night, as the barracks settled into silence, Emily lay on her bunk, reflecting on the journey she had undertaken. She had arrived as the quiet, underestimated recruit from Kansas, facing mockery, doubt, and physical challenges that seemed insurmountable. Through discipline, focus, and skill, she had not only proven herself, but had transformed the platoon, guiding them to unity and excellence. Her father's words echoed in her mind. True strength doesn't shout. It earns respect quietly, through action, discipline, and focus. She had embodied those principles fully, proving that quiet determination could command respect and lead others to success. The transformation of the platoon was complete. They now followed Emily's example instinctively, trusting her judgment, learning from her actions, and working together as a cohesive unit. Where there had once been doubt, there was now confidence. Where there had once been mockery, there was now respect. And where there had once been individual effort, there was now unity, guided by the quiet girl who had earned her place among them. As Emily closed her eyes, she felt a sense of fulfillment. She had not sought recognition, only mastery, only the opportunity to honor her father's legacy and prove her own strength. But in doing so, she had inspired those around her, leaving a lasting impact on the platoon and the culture of the group. The next day would bring new challenges, new drills, and new recruits, but Emily Carter's place was secure. She had earned the respect of her peers, the acknowledgement of her instructors, and the knowledge that she had truly become a Marine, disciplined, skilled, and quietly unstoppable. And as the lights dimmed and the barracks grew silent, the quiet girl from Kansas rested, knowing she had achieved something extraordinary. She had transformed not only herself, but everyone around her, leaving a legacy of quiet strength, strategic brilliance, and unwavering courage. Private Emily Carter, once mocked and underestimated, had become the guiding force of her platoon, a symbol of what true strength, discipline, and leadership could achieve. The quiet storm had arrived, and no one would ever forget her.